Hello, this is Chris Down. He's the SVP of Hot Wheels, and we're working with him on a mixed reality toy that will be coming out this fall.
So look, I mean, physical toys is something that the Hot Wheels brand and a lot of brands that are kind of related to and for kids. It's been around since the dawn of like the rock, and Hot Wheels is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. It is absolutely a brand that caters to what kids are doing, and what kids are doing is not just physical play; it's also digital play. We know that over 80% of our core audience is already on tablets. We know that the majority of those kids are not just watching content, but the majority of them are actually playing games. So we recognize that as a brand that wants to continue to sustain its position and be successful in the future, it has to be relevant. And so the notion that we came to Trigger with was, how can we take a conventional, recognizable play experience that's rooted in Hot Wheels play and bring that into kind of an experiential domain that is relevant and exciting to maybe a new base of consumers, but also resonates with our existing consumers.
And then for Trigger, what we're kind of bringing to the table is, besides our AR experiences, and I apologize for my voice, is we work with a whole bunch of innovation groups for many different companies. So innovation group for Visa, for other toy companies, for Honda, where we're really building an expertise on how to combine digital and physical together so that it's not just an AR layer. And that's what we've applied to this Mattel project.
So look, I mean, when you're certainly when you're sitting on a 50-year-old brand like I am, or you're a company that specializes in more digital play and digital experiences as well as augmented reality, the notion of being able to effectively leverage the equity of that brand that you're marrying to is fundamental. It's absolutely critical. So understanding that balance so that you're actually delivering something that truly resonates with your existing base but also feels authentic to maybe new consumers that you're bringing into the experience is critical. And so one of the first things that we did in partnership was really just explore, what does the current Hot Wheels product line look like? I mean, it's a billion-dollar brand with over 1,000 SKUs. And it's not just the die-cast 1/64th scale cars, it's also an array of track sets. We've also done other digital type play experiences. What is augmented reality, in this case, going to bring to the party, and what has to be true in terms of the Hot Wheels brand proposition with augmented reality that authenticate in the way that we described earlier?
So the main focus was that AR would not just be eye candy, that it actually improves play. And I think the unique opportunity with Hot Wheels is that, like previously when you have an AR character over an empty floor or an empty table, there's no feedback loop. The great thing with this Mattel opportunity is that the track and the cars actually react to the AR environment and the digital content. And I think that's going to be a game changer. There's a couple of things where, in our experience, we've done 30+ digital physical play prototypes for other toy companies as well. And this idea of playing to the technology strengths, we're not jumping into AR and just using AR for AR's sake. We are finding places where AR works best and is most stable, and that's when we want to use it. And then at other times, it's more about pure physical play or device down, looking at the UI sort of play.
So just on this point, I mean, the provocation was awesome. I mean, if you think of it in just very primitive or fundamental forms, you take a track set and you bring a gamification experience to it, suddenly you can just imagine how you might be able to augment solo play, turn it into a gamified experience, where you can level up, et cetera, as well as a gamified multiplayer situation, which we found highly exciting. So here's an example, and this is just a quick video that shows you a little bit of a physical play experience. It's based on a platform that has been around for a number of years with Hot Wheels. It's a capacitor-powered mini vehicle. It's 1/64th in scale. They're authentic Hot Wheels cars that are ripping around this track. Generally speaking, it's been kind of a watch me type of experience with limited interaction. So again, the provocation of being able to take augmented reality or a digital overlay without distracting the user or the player from that physical experience so that it's truly a mixed reality experience that leverages the benefits of physical play and the recognition, the kind of brandedness of it, with something that actually gamifies the experience and adds a really cool magic trick, but at its root, at its core, extremely importantly, it adds a play benefit.
And we're going to show you a concept video of the digital play. It's quite early on, so it's a little bit rough, but you'll see where the promise is.
Control the action with your smart device. Connect and customize. The first to complete 20 laps wins. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go! These electric-powered cars are super fast. But watch your charge level. Hit the button to pit stop. Full charge, 3 laps to go. Blue car takes the lead. Red car takes a chance in the loop. All right, he earns an attack. Red car launches an oil attack on the blue car. Blue car enters the pit stop covered in oil. Wipe it off to get back in the race. It's the final lap. Red car takes the victory.
So to unpack that all a little bit, there's a lot going on. The app is keeping track of where the cars are, lap scores. It's a controller, but it's also doing things like adding augmentation. So when a car is hit, goes into the pit, there's actually mini games. The track is coming to life that you saw during the intro sequence with a whole AR environment around it. But all of that in a very balanced way. So the kid, you never lose focus of the actual physical play, and there's never a lot of friction during that whole process.
It's also worth saying that what you guys are seeing is very much like the patient on the table, like with chest opened, and it is the early phases where we're learning about kind of what the most compelling experience is. And you have to put a stake in the ground somewhere and say, this is where we're going to start, based on some assumptions. Some of those assumptions were fleshed out between Jason's team and my team in terms of like creating an animatic or an animation that proves it out just in concept. Prototyping, physical prototyping is really the only way, especially when you're dealing with a consumer audience that is on the younger age of what most of you would consider game players. We're talking about kind of 8+, so younger consumers. Is it doable? Is it not? Physical prototyping as well as digital prototyping is absolutely critical. And I mean, you guys are seeing it. This is a product that isn't launching until this fall. So it's relatively early in the development process.
So we'll show you a couple of slides of the prototype process. So these are paper prototypes, and it's actually quite interesting because you have this very high-tech sort of thing that you're building. You have all the electronics that are going into the track and all the sensors and the chargers, and then you have this app with AR and all that sort of stuff. But the fundamental core fun of the play has to work on paper. So that's something that we, as a team, worked on and started with, like to make sure that the kind of main mechanics are even at a board game level where you're rolling dice to see who's ahead and all that sort of stuff, still works and still feels fun.
You know, that quickly leads to validating through physical prototypes. And this thing looks like something that's Frankenstein together using styrene and wires and, you know, does pitting work? What is the level of distraction in using your smart device to actually cause physical things to happen in the physical race object versus moments when the consumer or the player is drawn to other mini games or other activities that are screen focused. So these physical prototypes help to validate assumptions, also debunk some of those assumptions, as well as ultimately make a better consumer experience.
And also to find these friction points that are that might be quite surprising if you haven't been building this before in the past. So depending on the device, like kids have fatigue issues with holding up an iPad for extended period of time, so you have to design within that fatigue. Like Chris said, where are their eyes naturally focusing during which phase of the race, and kind of play into that. But again, all of this thing is kind of academic until we put it in front of the kids.
Oh, that was so cool. Amazing. I never did that before. You got to use an iPad with it, and it goes around super fast. You're controlling them, and it's like you're using your imagination. More fun. Actually, it was double real. How come? It's kind of like magic, and magic is real.
So to be clear, that's the response that you want to have. But I mean, just to illustrate the point and the natural tension that exists, what we found early on, we had some assumptions that, wow, we can create an AR situation where you're always looking through the device and controlling the gating, so you're pitting and going through the loop, and that did not work. Kids are either focused here and kind of would drift away or get confused, or as Jason mentioned, the level of fatigue can go up and it's just not a sustainable play experience. And frankly, it drew too much away from the physical experience into the digital experience and kind of lost its identity. Why do I have this, $150 set with augmented reality sitting here in front of me when I'm actually just valuing the digital experience on the iPad? I'll just stick to the iPad, thank you very much. So those are some of the earlier learning.
So with all these different components, like what we found in testing is this idea that like with kids, the experience can be multimodal. So they're totally cool with switching from one phase to the next, like AR, illustration, on-screen animation, it's a controller. They don't mind switching between that stuff. It's very natural to them. But what you can't do is have a multifocal experience. You can't have them trying to do a mini game, but there's also like mini game on screen, but there's also something happening in AR out there as well. So you always have to keep them focused through your device on what you want them, what the primary play objective is. So if it's a controller during one phase, that's what's most prominent. If it's AR, then that's most prominent. If it's just stats while the cars are racing, then that's most prominent. But the kid never guesses. Like the UX kind of changes on the fly and also leads them through that experience as well. So in the actual game, there are these 6 different types of moments. There's a race intro where the whole track, physical track, comes alive with all this extra AR environment. There's all the high-speed racing where the device becomes just a controller, and then when you can jump into a pit. When you go into a pit, it's like AR for status and displays. You can pick up power-ups when you go through the loop, and then even attacks between players, and then mini-games in AR as well. And all of this balanced in such a way that there's as little friction as possible for the kid. Also so again, kind of focusing on how do we use digital to do things that are difficult to do physically. So one element, a simple thing is like a kid has a lot of trouble counting laps at 1 lap per second. So all these kind of stats and stuff we can do in the app. But another thing that's powerful that digital can do is adding a story layer. So we can do little bursts of story from sound effects to voiceovers to AR to little bits of animation that actually paint a much larger environment and much larger story. So, and the key is to not slow down gameplay by forcing story into the mix as well. So just a quick glimpse of, you saw that kind of concept video that was very rough, and this is kind of closer to the direction of the final product. Where everything is super high-tech, super modern, but the idea that there's the physical track, and then all these are kind of visual displays. They can be modular grandstands that are floating around. But on those displays, as you're racing, you're not only seeing stats from your race, but you can see broadcasters, if you crash, they'll talk about your crash. If you pulled off a really cool loop, you get an instant replay. But all these kind of like small little snippets of video can really add to a much larger story.
So hit us with any questions. I mean, you know, it'd be awesome to be standing here right now with a couple months of sales under our belt, so we could say this is the most successful toy on the planet ever in the history of toys. That's not the case, but it might be this fall. We'll see. I think that the way that Mattel, and certainly from a brand point of view, we're looking at it is, as I mentioned before, kids are playing in digital, augmented reality, and this type of digital play can truly enhance the experience, as well as allow us to learn. So, you know, we're going to find out a lot more. If you guys have questions about the process, about the product itself, about anything, now's the time.
Sorry, quick question for you. How is this different than just an AR overlay over the Anki Overdrive Racing control set that's already sold at Best Buy? I mean, how do you guys differentiate from that?
I mean, I'll answer from a physical product point of view. I think that, you know, something like Anki Overdrive is a pretty in-depth, multi-level tablet or smart device controlled play experience. It does have a physical component as well. Certainly from a physical execution point of view, it's a different type of experience that's oriented toward an older consumer. So the play experience is actually quite a bit more sophisticated than this one, in that there are game mechanics that are going on the digital side that do augment the physical play. This one being track-based, capacitor-based cars, your compulsion loop is very much driven around, and we didn't get into this detail, but it's about resource management. Each of these capacitive driven cars need to recharge every 40 seconds or so. So how many laps you can do and what you do during that time is very much controlled by you. And that physical aspect of resource management is very much a part of the game. It's a more primitive type of game targeted at a younger consumer than Anki, and it relies less on a heavy digital play experience driven by the tablet. It's truly something that is a more mixed reality execution where a lot of the digital play stays focused around the physical product.
Yeah, and I think that like what Chris said about it being a little bit more physical, so it moves closer over to the physical side on the spectrum, I think actually makes it more exciting. It's more visceral because of that. It feels more like racing because the crashes feel more like crashes versus a very sanitized kind of digital play that's trying to translate physical racing. It is physical racing, you know?
It also goes 4 times faster than Anki. TM. No, just kidding. It is very fast experience as well, which is kind of cool.
So I've got a 2-part question. Number 1 is, how did you guys get together, come up with this idea, and get it greenlit? Okay, in other words, you know, what was that process like, and you know, sort of what was the impotence for it? The other one would be, what happens when, you know, Johnny's friend comes over, but there's only one touchpad?
So I'll take a stab. I mean, in terms of the relationship and how things get greenlit, I mean, there is a process of how we greenlight every season. We're typically working on 15-month development cycles at Mattel because there's a physical product and physical boat shipping involved from manufacturer to retail. We are generally, I mean, we're finishing off fall 18 and working on 2019 right now. So we have a process that starts with brainstorming and ideation, and then goes to line selection, item selection, and this would fall kind of in that range. So over a year ago, we started having conversations with Trigger. We met through kind of a mutual acquaintance and have done a couple of things since together. So Jason and his team, because they are kind of leaders in the augmented reality space and have kid experience, which are kind of 2 great tastes that not many other companies have, were a natural partner selection for Mattel, and we knew that they would be a good partner in developing the product line or the product. One touchpad, I think it's one of the beautiful things here. I think as a solo experience, because there is a gamified aspect, doing things like how many laps can you do in a certain amount of time can be both a solo experience as well as a multiplayer experience using one tablet. So it actually opens up opportunities for all types of variations of play regardless of how many devices you have access to.
Did you guys find that when you were designing and testing that on your demographic, it bottomed out at a certain point, just with the level of sophistication of using the device and the physical toys?
So from a Mattel point of view, I mean, we're observing digital physical play all the time. This is not going to be the first digital physical experience that we have within the Hot Wheels brand or across Mattel. What we are observing is that the level of can-do is getting younger every single year, but for something like this, there's a physical kind of a physical aspect to it that requires kind of a certain age of dexterity to get to, as well as the digital component. The digital component really isn't the hang-up. The physical aspect is something that starts to resonate around can-do at age 6 and 7. Below that, like 4 and 5, they can do it. The twins that you saw in that video were below our target age, which is what we typically do to see what the thresholds are. Generally, we're targeting a play experience overall to a slightly older consumer, but we're making sure that from a range point of view, can-do goes down fairly low. Usually, if it's a digital physical experience, 4 and 5-year-olds is pretty much the threshold. With something like this that has a high physical component, though, 6, 7 is the sweet spot.
I would also say that, like, even in all this kid testing, even when you go young, like, it is surprising how if AR is not purposeful and it's not really part of the fun, even if it's a young kid, they'll get bored.
They lose interest.
Yeah, the second time they see it, you know.
Really appreciated the presentation, guys. I'm curious, in your development and your testing with kids, can you talk a little bit more about where you found kids getting hung up of where to look, you know, the physical play versus, oh, now it's time to look at my device and I have to make some adjustments and, oh, focus back on the track now. And, you know, and in that process, what decisions did you make that improved the flow of the play?
So one thing was, like, when the cars are at speed and they're racing around the track, they are going super fast. So there's some augmentation at the beginning of the race to set up the world, and then after, you're really watching the cars physically. And where the AR comes back in is when the cars, for either they're going into the pit voluntarily or they've been hit by an attack and they have to go in for repairs. We know that the car is physically locked and the kid's attention is locked at one spot. That's when we bring AR back in and add, like, kind of mini games and AR on top of that to make that moment interesting. And then it's released and then back into physical play. So there's a lot of balancing of that, and then also different things to get your attention back down to the device. Let's say when there's an alert and an attack is coming in or something like that, we want their eyes to go from the track back down to the phone.
So the cars that you have in the pack, are you going to be selling accessory packs? And the second question is, how someone who already has a Hot Wheels collection, how are they going to not get messed up with the difference in vehicles that they have? So
just to be clear, is your question specifically about the capacitive power cars?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, it's based on a pretty old technology. Actually, in like 40 years ago, there was something called sizzlers, and some of you guys may know what it is. More recently, speed chargers. So 1/64th scale capacitive powered cars have been kind of in the Hot Wheels portfolio for a while. The sets that those cars go with and the sets that a typical die-cast, non-powered car go with are kind of two different worlds in our ecosystem. They're the same size, and the powered cars can actually go in the analog sets, but it can't go the other way. So for this set, it is going to be one comprehensive set where everything that you need to play, including the track, well, not the smart device, but everything other than the smart device is going to be in the box. So it's going to come with a couple of cars. We'll also sell those in an assortment so that you can buy other cars and potentially even have physical upgrades in the future. And I see the zero. Oh, we have one more question.
One last question. You guys already have a deal with Rocket League. Did that help influence this as well? Will they be coming over?
So we have the deal with Rocket League wasn't exactly expecting that question. So we did have content. We did have 5 cars that went into a downloadable content pack in Rocket League last year. It was top 2 seller. So we do have a partnership with Rocket League, and we are working on a physical project with them right now. It does not have anything to do with this project. It's going to be a different project, also for launch in fall 18, yet to be announced. It's pretty badass though.
You know, I think this project is incredible. And of course, Mattel and other traditional toy brands, of course, have had a difficult time the last so many years, but this is a great example of what is possible. And so now my question is, I believe the sales cycle for toys, at least the revenue that you typically see, something like 80% within the month or two before Christmas to Christmas. But now I assume this will help now kind of spread out when you can sell at least this toy or this brand. So my question is, I'm guessing this really helps Mattel as a toy company to not only see big revenues November, December, but now all year round because you're actually marrying the digital and the analog.
So I would say that this fits much more in the conventional fall selling model that toys typically follow, which is 75 to 80% of your volume is done in the last 3 months of the year. This is a high-priced item. It is going to be one of the hot toys for the holiday season. That said, it's a provocation. The more that we are doing physical product that have digital components, the more opportunity there is for downstream revenue generation and evening out that revenue cycle. This one, right now, out of the gate, does not have that in its plan. Right now, we're just making the best badass toy that we can and launch with the right level of kind of post-launch updates and that sort of thing to keep the product fresh. We don't, with this item, have revenue generation as part of the program outside of the physical product proposition. That said, because of the nature of what it is, it certainly has that opportunity. And even more important than this item is what we learn from this, the level of engagement that we create with consumers as we bring them in and kind of create this appetite of digital and physical play. It gives us the opportunity to leverage that later on with other products.
It's a very smart project, and it's a great trigger for other projects down the road, and that's awesome. Okay, guys, yeah, thanks a lot.